everyone, and welcome back to the WeNight YouTube channel. My name is Jennifer Dominic. I am the founder of WeNight, and I'm also going to be your interviewer for today. If this is your first WeNight video, then you're welcome to one of a series of careers insights from people who either have a background in STEM or are currently working in a STEM associated industry. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our guest for today. Hi Rob, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Jennifer. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Without further ado, I'm sure our guests will want to know a little bit more about you and what you're currently doing at the moment.
Absolutely. So good morning, everyone. My name's Rob John. I'm currently Chief of Staff for MSD across our Europe and Canada region. So I guess one first quick reflection. I often got asked, why did you add the Canada to the Europe piece? So for those not sort of close to life sciences, the Canadian healthcare system is much more similar to the European healthcare system, so you think of an NHS type construct. So as an organisation, we bring those sort of two parts of the globe together, and I'm very fortunate to have this brilliant role as Chief of Staff.
Brilliant, and I guess that's how I've also met you as well,
yes.
For your mentorship for me in terms of the Chief of Staff role. So take this opportunity to say thank you for that as well.
You're very kind. It's always a two-way discussion, so I benefit from it a great deal as well.
Awesome. Okay, now let's talk about how you landed yourself in this interesting role. But before we get to that, let's understand a little bit more about what a day in the life of a Chief of Staff looks like.
Okay, so I'm going to probably sound horribly cliched for this initial bit, but no one day is the same. So on this particular week, I'm really fortunate to be in our London offices, meeting with yourself and a few other people, but recently I've been with our teams in Italy, as well as our teams in France. Essentially, any one day for me is about ensuring that our business is operating as efficiently as possible. So I just kind of have this little box that I try and make all of the dynamics run as smoothly as possible, and that frees up the time and capacity to help me help the business in the much longer term. So therefore, a typical day could be making sure that our schedules are organised. Do we know who we're visiting, both internal and external engagements? But then hopefully that frees the capacity to step back and look a little longer term, perhaps reviewing our longer term forecasts with our finance colleagues, perhaps talking to our market access department about upcoming obstacles or even opportunities to ensure that we can reach more patients in need. Or it could just be sat with one of our brilliant marketing teams looking at the different messages and different information that we need to get over to healthcare professionals.
That sounds really, really well-rounded. And earlier you mentioned that the role involves covering Europe and Canada.
Yeah.
So how does that impact what your day-to-day role looks like?
So I'm really fortunate versus some of my global peers that, for the most part, time zones are pretty curtailed. Obviously a little bit of adjustment for Canada. But what it does mean is really embracing hybrid ways of working. The pandemic has affected us in really profound and really difficult ways, but actually one thing it has done is really brought home how much more effective we can be remotely. So I'm under no illusions. There is no sort of jet set lifestyle to managing all of these different projects in different countries. What I really enjoy doing is engaging with people face to face when I can, but actually, very productive online calls, emails, different channels that we have both internally and externally to reach people. So yes, I might have a conference or a video call with someone in Italy in the morning, then I might have a face-to-face discussion with yourself here in London in the afternoon. So yeah, I'm really lucky in that regard.
Definitely very dynamic. And since you've been in the role, if someone were to, I guess, shadow you to an example of one of the many things that you're doing on a week-by-week basis, what might that look like in terms of the operational element of what you might have to do in your role?
Absolutely. So if I pick, I think, 1 week from the last couple, which was really interesting, shows that spectrum. So on the Monday, we were preparing to talk to our internal teams across the many countries. So we'd call that a town hall or a speaking engagement. So that was very operational. That was working with our brilliant communications partners to ensure that we had a platform, both in terms of a live audience, but also those remotely, to enable us to sort of communicate and align the many sort of complexities that we're running as a business across our organisation of many hundreds of people joining that conversation. But that flipped through to the next day of saying, well, actually, let's take a smaller leadership team. Let's take the opportunity whilst we've all come together to engage a wider audience and really focus on what are the things that we can do as leaders to both develop our people and move our business forward. So that was a much more focused discussion, and my role in that was bringing the agenda together. Do we have the right speakers? Do we have the right outputs? And are we capturing those in an important way? And then that rolled into a third day of welcoming a new colleague into the team and just being able to do a bit of a round table, bringing someone up to speed and trying to be as inclusive as possible from day one to move things forward. In that regard, I was presenting a little, I was chairing a little, and dare I say it, I was being the slightly bossy one in the room and trying to actually move things forward when we ran over time. I don't do bossy well, my kids would disagree, but that made for a really interesting week, and rounded off by getting home. I think it was on a Thursday, for a couple of days working from home, going through a few different presentations and preparing for the next week.
Wow. I think you summarised that really, really well in terms of what just one week could look like, and I assume all the other weeks for the rest of the year look completely different to that as well.
They do. But I like that dynamic nature, as I think, as you nicely put it. It kind of keeps me on my toes, it keeps the engagements different, but I have huge admiration for the colleagues that I'm able to interact with, who kind of put up with my hectic scheduling to make that work.
And so maybe I'll dive in a little bit into the regional element of your role. Do you have an example as to how you might work with a particular country within the various countries that are covered within your region?
Absolutely. So I think best practice is sometimes sort of an overused term. But actually it's so important to focus on, well, what is best practice sharing? And I have a brilliant vantage point. I try to ensure that I'm never taking credit for the work that's being done. But if we are fortunate enough to be, as I said a couple of weeks ago with our team in Italy, seeing some of the brilliant things they're doing, and that won't immediately be visible perhaps to yourself in the UK or our colleagues in France. So when you've got that next engagement and they're showing you perhaps a challenge or an opportunity that they're working through in their environment, perhaps with their healthcare system, perhaps with how they're engaging with their employees, to be able to say, well, actually, the team in Italy are doing something really similar, and actually if we can get the right translation services available, actually the end engagement for the employee is very similar. Then being able to connect the two. I won't bore the audience with the details, but I know you're working on one project for us at the moment that actually Italy are also progressing, and having both the UK and Italy moving that forward together, with France, Spain, a number of other markets to follow in a I think it's going to be a few months' time, they're going to benefit so massively from you being able to say, look, here are our learnings, these are little stumbling blocks, and the next time if you follow suit with them, we'll refine again. So sharing between the markets is a big part of what I tried to do.
I can definitely attest to that, because that's something I think you've done really, really well. I think in terms of working within a country and understanding what has worked well, what could be improved upon, and how can we make that specific to some of the opportunities and challenges we'd like to share from a market perspective as well. And it just makes me wonder, with a role so dynamic and so well-rounded, I guess, how did you end up in this role? Take us back to basics.
So it's a great question, and I feel very lucky, and there's been sort of good turn of events which have led to this. So I wasn't particularly imaginative whilst I was doing my A-levels, if I'm really honest. I was studying 3 A-levels. Biology I was really enjoying. I thought biology is what I want to do. Went to university, very fortunate to go to University of Bath, and they had a fantastic placement in your 3rd year. It was very clear through my 2nd year as I was starting to look at placements that I did not click with the lab environment. I thought labs were for me. I thought I really enjoyed the hands-on science. I have such respect for the people that have that discipline in them, but if I'm honest, it didn't work for me. And so whilst many of my course colleagues were going off to work in life sciences or agrochemical or other areas, I was looking to apply my science in a different way. And Johnson & Johnson, who are obviously a big healthcare but also pharmaceutical company, ran a placement program, and the stars aligned, for want of a better term. I had some great mentors and leaders that took me in there, and really things started to kind of fall into position. I was like, wow, I'm applying my scientific learning, I'm getting to read clinical papers, I'm getting to understand something about medicine, but I'm applying it in a different way. I'm applying it to how will we communicate and engage physicians and patients and external stakeholders. I went back to university with a pretty much single-minded focus. I will go into pharmaceuticals. Everything about it sort of rang true for me, about trying to do the right things for patients, and in a slightly competitive way, each company advancing their science, challenging someone else to push a little bit further. That led me to AstraZeneca, a company I have a lot of respect for. They've done some brilliant things, most notably recently through the pandemic, but I spent some time there in different analytical roles, I was a representative calling on physicians in hospitals in southwest London for a period of time. And then an opportunity came up to join MSD. I'm very fortunate that a great mentor had recently moved over. And I went through a series of roles, including my first line management position. How could we engage differently through digital channels? And then when the opportunity came up to go beyond the UK and start working with different markets across Europe, someone really did take a leap of faith on me. Brand new therapy area that I wasn't familiar with, a number of markets I wasn't familiar with, but they had that belief in me as a person, which I'm sort of eternally grateful for. As I started to work across the different countries, I really started to kind of hone my interest and my skill set around operations. And that very naturally, in a couple of roles, led to this super chief of staff position. And I should do the annoying air quotes with chief of staff, because it kind of evokes those images of kind of the White House or US blockbuster films. But in reality, I get to be the person that tries to ensure that the sum of the team is more than the sum, and that kind of multiplication effort that can have. And that's what makes me tick. And I'm much more comfortable in recent years being able to say that that's what I enjoy doing on behalf of the organisation.
That's really cool. And I think where it's been such a, I guess, adventurous journey, as you've kind of come to the point where you have so much more confidence in what you really enjoy, and where you feel you can add the most value to yourself and also to others as well. What would you say was your biggest learning as you progressed through the various roles that got you to this point?
Great question. I think for me the biggest learning is that the career path isn't as linear as I first believed. I think in part that I'd first been taught. I think I joined a different industry which has evolved really nicely, but I think society's evolved around us, and so definitely a big learning is there is this not one neat path. Life isn't quite like a board game that you roll the dice and you count in this sort of sequence, and actually going across, down, back up, back across, and actually growing breadth of experience that can make you sort of more impactful and more valuable in the next role. And I'm probably just a slow learner. It just took me a while to clock that. And I think for a while I was always looking for what's the next logical role in this sequence. And actually, sometimes you've got to suspend belief in logic and look at the opportunities in front of you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And the reason I also asked that is in recent conversations, I think when you're speaking to a lot of people currently in their placement years or looking to graduate, and they feel that need that it has to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yeah.
And when they meet someone who's not necessarily done that, they get like really flustered about why and how can I definitely kind of aspire to get there if what you've done has been a little bit like this. So the blueprint is not as clear as what I was hoping. And I guess, what advice would you give to anyone who's currently in that position, looking to make those decisions and coming across a profile like yourself where you've done such a good breadth of experience, and here you are in this era, I guess, of your pathway, and still continuing to explore?
No, thank you. So I think advice for people, and at the risk of sounding like some kind of a LinkedIn stalker, use platforms out there, and other platforms are available, but have a look at what people have done. I think we can do more as leaders, as industries, to share those paths, but there's only so many sort of blogs and things people want to read. Go out and do your own research. Who do you admire? Who are the leaders? And I'll guarantee when you click on that profile, it won't have been that linear path. Use that to build your own confidence in terms of, okay, it might be a bit of a zigzag path. See that they've probably taken some learnings, both good and bad, on that way. But hopefully that also then inspires ideas about, oh wow, I had no idea they could have done that. I meet leaders every week where I'm like, I had no idea you did that. You worked in our labs. I thought you were from finance, or vice versa. You meet someone in finance that started out working in our sort of legal department. I think the more you explore, the more questions you ask, the more confidence you get at, okay, that path needn't be linear. It might be, and that's absolutely fine and rewarding in its own right, but not having the pressure for it to be linear. Take that pressure off yourself, and I think it becomes a lot easier to explore. Thank
you, Rob. And I guess maybe it leads me to my next question around diversity and inclusion. So in an industry like the one that we work in, it's quite broad, and there's lots of different avenues for people to kind of come in terms of what we're trying to deliver and the people that we're working with to achieve that as well. What importance have you seen for D&I in our industry through your years of experience?
So for me, I'll sound like it's sort of, that's sort of the tagline, but you can't overstate this enough. We are here to serve patients and society, and patients and society are as diverse as it comes, and we have to reflect that internally if we're going to serve them the best medicines, the best science, and move things forward as best we can. You need diversity in so many different measures, but you need that diversity to drive different thinking processes, finding different solutions. Underlying, it's fundamentally the right thing to do to have a diverse organisation. But have that diverse organisation, make it equitable so that we are creating those same opportunities both internally that provide those then externally, and have an inclusive mindset. If I hadn't worked with inclusive leaders, I really believe I wouldn't have been given the opportunities I had. I had people that, as I said earlier, took a bit of a leap of faith on me in certain roles. I hadn't come from a traditional background in many ways. At school, I wasn't always kind of on top of things academically. I struggled with dyslexia for a while, but I had leaders that kind of oversaw a few sort of blips and things in my emails and my written communication to say, but he's working in the right direction. Without those, I wouldn't be here. And as leaders, we've got to be better allies. We've got to lead more by example, and we've got to have conversations like this where I'll trip over my words. I won't say things right, but I hope that if we start saying and doing more, we'll be able to progress things.
Thanks, Rob. I was going to ask what you hope someone watching this video might gain if there was one or two things, but you might have covered that. Maybe I'll ask, is there anything else that you might want to add for any of the viewers out here watching this conversation right now?
Thank you. So I'm already impressed if they've watched this far and listened to me for this long, so thank you. I think I'm really passionate about STEM in general, and then in particular, the career and the opportunities I've been able to have in life sciences. I'd really, tell people to go out and have a look at what's available. Very often when you're shown an industry, you see it through one lens, you see it through one optic. I'm speaking from the commercial side of pharmaceuticals, but we have brilliant scientists, we have brilliant people in manufacturing, we have brilliant people in human resources, legal, finance, communications. There's so many different avenues to any one industry. So just be inquisitive. If someone's giving you a little glimpse, you think, no, that's interesting, or it's not quite for me, just flip it and look at that same sector, look at that same industry from another side. It's like, actually, that's the bit that works for me. I think if I'd not pushed that initial little bit, or someone hadn't afforded me the opportunity, I would have ruled out life sciences because I just wasn't enjoying my time in the lab. It didn't work for me. So yeah, have that little bit of inquisitive nature, and who knows where it will take you.
Who knows? Who knows? That might be the start of someone's journey today.
I hope so, I really do.
And with that, so what do you think might be next on this journey?
Oh, you see, that's the big $1 million question. I hope to continue taking my skill set further. I would love a position where at the moment, I'm very fortunate to work, as I said, with colleagues across Europe and Canada. For me, that journey, learning about other parts of the world, other regions, other markets, getting a little closer to the full business. So to that different lens I just spoke about, there are many parts of the business I haven't seen. So at least within MSD and other organisations, you hear people talk about the enterprise. What are the different components that you've got to bring together? If someone were to take another leap of faith on me and give me some access to the broader enterprise so that I can influence from a bigger leverage point, I'd really enjoy doing that. I think it's important to keep pace with how society is moving around us. The pandemic has shone a spotlight on this industry like never before. I have family members that knew kind of what I did. I've had more questions in the last couple of years about vaccines than I knew sort of people had in them to ask me, and I've loved those family discussions. I've loved answering questions for friends and think, wow, what a time to be in the sector. So if I can ride that wave, for want of a better term, a little bit further and have greater influence, but mostly if I can carry on having conversations like this, if I can carry on enabling our people to achieve more, then even if there's no magic new chapter, I'll be really fulfilled in what I'm doing.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey. It's been inspiring, I think, learning a bit more about you and your journey through this interview for myself, and I'm sure others will find this also very, very inspiring as well. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for taking the time to watch our conversation. As Rob said, if you got this far, we're really, really grateful. If you liked the video, go ahead and like, comment and subscribe, and also check out other profiles and see what you're able to learn from us today.